So a tiny trigger warning on this episode. At one point we do mention sexual assault, but it is very brief. And that is literally what we say, is if we refer to a pair of sexual assaults. We don't go into detail because we never do. That's not us. But if you are triggered by such things, you might want to skip this episode, or at least skip the section where we talk about the start of Boudicca's battle, because that's where it's mentioned. Thanks, and you matter. I'm Dean, I'm the dad.
I'm Laura, I'm the mom.
And I'm Arthur, I'm the son.
And together we are...
Family Plot! I tried to join in on the second one.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
absolutely. That's okay.
It happens.
It works.
Let's get the housekeeping out of the way real quick. A couple of ways you can support us. First is Patreon, $1 and $3 levels. Right now, Mom is the $3 level, well, Mom and Lexi, while Arthur and I are the $1 level. And at the end of the month, whichever one has more, gets that person. We'll pick one of those people to get a fantastic prize.
Heck yeah.
We're going to pick it out of a hat.
Yes.
Yes. But if you're a $3 patron, you go in ours. If you're a $1 patron, you go in Dean and Arthur's.
Yes. Hey. So, if you cannot do a monthly donation, which is what Patreon is, you can always do $1 or $2 through Buy Me a Coffee. If you enjoy the show, please share it on social media.
Share it with friends.
Share it with family.
With everyone. And if you don't enjoy the show, please
keep it to yourself.
If you don't have anything nice to say,
don't say nothing at all.
He didn't like that answer, so he made a party noise.
I was just trying to add a raspberry to the end of it. Like, you each have a thing you say. I couldn't come up with a thing to say, so I was trying to give...
You felt
left out. You feel left out?
felt left out on that
It's
part.
not that I felt... I was just trying to be included. The more stuff we do as a family, the more of a family plot.
Fair enough. So, speaking of family plot, what are we talking about tonight, Dad?
Actually, before we go to family plot, I do want to take a quick moment to talk about family role, partially because I impressed myself by making a prototype logo today. I feel like all the notes were there, but they weren't quite in the right order.
Well, yes, I think that what you started out with is a really good start. And by the time we are ready to put out that first episode, it's going to be awesome.
And speaking of first episodes, I do know that we will have Heather Halliday on board.
Yes.
And so we will start recording the first season very soon.
It's not going to be too much longer. We're excited to get going with it.
Yep. So, yeah. But I did want to touch base with that before we go into tonight's show. And tonight, we go back to England. I know, we were just there with the craze. But we're going back. This time a little further back, right around the time of the BCE and CE changeover.
He wanted to use the cardboard box again.
To meet a woman whom the Romans tried to ignore, and she led a bloody revolt that came close to pushing the Romans out of Britain in this girl power, Who Needs Wonder Woman When You've Got Boudicca episode of the Family Plot Podcast.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. I don't know that Boudicca can stand up to Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was one of the few DC characters that I was ever really a big fan of, so you'll have to sell me a little bit more on that one, hon.
Well, Boudicca was a ruler of the Iceni tribe. The Icenis are a tribe we know very little about because they got crushed and absorbed into the Roman Empire right around this time. We know the Iceni minted their own coins, which was rare. We think their name comes for the ancient name for the river Ouse, which was, according to some scholars, the Icen. According to others, it comes from the Welsh word Icen, which means ox, which the Iceni were known to keep. We know from archaeological evidence that the Iceni made big rings of gold, silver, and electrum. And electrum, that's a word I rarely see outside of D&D.
Right? For sure.
There's a lot of words you rarely see outside of a lot of things.
But they were mostly worn around their necks or shoulders. We know they lived in the area around modern Suffolk and Norfolk. And didn't the Crays have something to do with Suffolk last week? Isn't that where they went when they spent their year in the country before Mom brought them back?
That sounds possible.
That sounds right.
But we know they lived there because evidence of their existence has been widely found in that area. Mostly, everything we know about the Iceni comes from the Romans. And since the Romans are responsible for their disappearance, it is hard to say what the Romans recorded that is believable and what is not. We know that by 10 before Common Era, the Iceni were deputized by the Romans to rule the area and the Iceni people. The Iceni and the Romans were mostly on good terms until around 47 Common Era, or that would be AD for those of you more familiar with the BC AD. The Roman governor decided to disarm anyone under Roman rule. Well, the Iceni didn't like that and revolted. And while they were brought to order, it seems they were allowed to keep their independence as well as their weapons.
Well, that is wacky.
Why is it wacky?
I think what it is I don't know very much about European history, and that's definitely on me. But so all of this seems, for lack of a better word, very foreign to me, which foreign is actually the exact word, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It seems somehow. So I think that's what he's saying, weird, because we don't really learn very much at all about European history in public school.
Yeah,
Maybe in like junior and senior year, but I doubt that they've talked about. Have you guys talked about European history much? So
I mean, I'm in American history, so obviously we're not going to talk about European history yet.
Well, yeah, it was probably next year, probably in his junior year.
Even if you're studying European history, this is right around 0 BC, AD, whatever. So most of the politics and stuff was focused elsewhere around this time.
Gotcha.
I mean, 10 BCE, well, no, I'm sorry. 10 BCE, Christ is still walking around, at least according to what we know.
Mm.
So you got to remember, part of this happens while Christ is still walking. This is a bit old, so I don't know how much of this gets covered even in Europe.
Yeah, that would be ancient European history. That's wild. Anyway.
Hear ye! Allow me to present Arthur's Corner.
Arthur, would you like to take us into your corner?
Yeah, you have someone to introduce.
I do. Everyone, welcome back to the corner. How are we doing today before I introduce our new guest?
Doing all right. How about you?
I am exhausted.
You have a new...
I have a new buddy. We have gotten me a kitty. And if it weren't for me begging Mom to allow me to get one, then I wouldn't have him. We have a new member of Family Plot. His name is Thunderstorm, or we call him Thunder. Sometimes I call him one of his nicknames, like Stormy or something like that.
So he's going to be very confused about what his actual name is all of his life. But that's
all
fine.
of his life. But you know what? It's normal.
That's okay. I read somewhere that cats don't identify with their name as themselves. They think it's just a word we say to get their attention.
It's a nickname.
Makes sense.
Hey, it does.
Right, whereas dogs, if you name a dog Fred, the dog seems to own, I'm Fred. But a cat...
Oh, I'm Fred.
But a cat is like, I'm not Fred, but Fred is one of the words they say to get my attention.
Makes sense.
My name is not Thunder. However, you are calling me Thunder, so I suppose that is the name that I
shall go by.
I shall go by.
Well, what do you think of him so far?
I love him.
Good.
He's the most cuddly, sweet boy ever. Like, I've had cats before him. Like, we have cats. But he's just the sweetest. Last night, I was laying in my bed, and I had woke up, like, around 1 or 2 in the morning, and I looked down at the bottom of my bed, and I just see this silly little fella just sitting there on the end of my bed. I'm just like, let me have you. I picked him up, and I put him down on me, and he just starts walking in circles while I keep petting him.
Yeah, that's what cats do.
Just walked in circles.
He's the baby.
He's so silly.
He's the baby.
And he's making the other kitty jealous already.
Yes, Apollo did not care for him walking into our room. Let him know right away.
Most definitely. And Mom thinks he's a Russian blue?
The coloring
He's
is right.
definitely part Russian blue.
Coloring's right.
Coloring seems right, and he's a long-furred cat, so...
Russian blues aren't necessarily long-furred. Most of the ones I know of are short, but they can't, they breed well with other animals, but that color's distinctive. That sort of gunmetal gray fur.
Yeah.
Yeah, under the light of our living room, there's parts of him that look like a powder blue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's just sniffing at the air because he smells food.
There's nothing wrong with him nose.
Nothing wrong with his nose.
So, what else you got to tell us about Arthur, Sir Arthur of Arthurness?
Well, I've been roaming around playing some Indigo Park. I've already finished the first chapter. I'm not sure if I've already talked about that or not, though.
What is it?
Indigo Park is, like a newer video game that sort of plays like Security Breach.
Ah.
But there's only one chapter out of it right now. But I've had a major obsession with it recently.
Cool.
Especially the main character, Rambly. We're also going to Ren Fair this weekend.
Yes. Yay! For Laura's birthday, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
You live in a zoo, and we're a bunch of monkeys. I love you.
Very nice, thank you, dear.
I was gonna sing the normal song, but that one works. So I'm super excited for that, and I have a mask made, and I have another mask design.
Yes, your new mask design is awesome.
Mom really likes it. Its name is Cupid, and she's a rabbit. She's like a pink, gray, and black rabbit, so I'm excited to make her.
Excellent.
That's about all I have for today, honestly.
that'll tell me to put claps in there.
Yes.
And then after claps will come the
Early.
Yes.
We know nothing about Boudicca?
Yes.
That's the pronunciation we're going with.
Boudicca's early life. We aren't even sure if Boudicca is her actual name. The Boudicca, also written Budug. Oh, wait.
The name Boudicca, which is also written as Biolgi, but that is spelled...
Biolgi. But it's spelled Buddug.
Yeah, that's the Welsh for you.
Welsh is interesting. But are those all of the Boudicca?
Boudicca or Boudicca? I can't... Or could be Boudicca? But yeah, basically.
Boudicca, all of them are like different spellings of Boudicca.
Right.
Which means victorious woman, and may merely be a title she was given. Also, Iceni?
Iceni, yeah.
Also, the Iceni did not have a written tradition, but an oral one, and we simply do not know if Boudicca was native to the Iceni tribe, or was a noble from another tribe who served as a consort to the king, or was some sort of battle mated to the king, chose from within the tribe.
So the question there is, we don't, like, the Celts were a little different than some other cultures. They let women fight, especially down near the Welsh people.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, she could have been a badass warrior within the tribe, and he married her because she was, or she could have been a noble from another tribe, and they married them as a form of alliance. We don't know.
Sure.
The only people who have written about this in that time are the Romans.
Right. She comes into history as the consort of Prestigious?
I thought it was Prosopagmus, but I could be wrong.
Prosopagmus. King of the Iceni?
Uh-huh.
And we know she bore him 2 daughters. And that is the end of what we know about the life of Boudicca. And again, I want to stress what we know of her, and the entire revolution comes from the Romans, most of whom reported what they were told by the people who were there. How much creative license did they take? We don't know.
Sure, absolutely. So, after all of that information, maybe we should take a break for some information from one of our fellow podcasts.
I believe this week it's Freaky AF, so let's get freaky.
Actually, I'm wrong. This week it's Fresh Hell, so let's get fresh.
Alrighty.
I'm Annie from Boston, Massachusetts.
And I'm Johanna from Vienna, Austria. We are the hosts of Fresh Hell, your international podcast that covers murder, mystery, and the macabre throughout history. Are you interested in the 3,569 ways your household could have killed you in the Victorian era?
Do you know how malaria and syphilis played a role in the John List family murders?
And have you ever wondered what Prince Albert's sex chair had to do with the murder of Stanford White? Okay, nothing. It had nothing to do with it. We're still telling you about it, though.
It's a pretty great sex chair. If you're looking for another show that talks about Ted Bundy, this is probably not the podcast for you. But if you're looking for 2 women that cover lesser-known cases from all over the world with a lot of background information.
So much background information that you will rock your local pub quiz from now on.
Then find Fresh Hell Podcast on your favorite podcast app.
We also have German cannibals.
See you soon.
Tschüss.
Wow, that was freaky. Freaky.
Freaky.
Somewhere around 60 CE,
Prosopagmus?
Prostatagus, who was near death, proclaimed that he was leaving his kingdom to Emperor Nero and his 2 daughters. He hoped by doing so that the Roman Empire would support his daughters, allowing them to rule with tacit approval from the Roman Empire, thus giving legitimacy to their reigns. At worst, he thought they might have to marry Roman nobles to keep their title. Prastatagus probably hoped that wouldn't happen, but must have known it was an option. However, something very different than either of these things happened. According to the Roman historian Cassius Dio, the Roman Empire had forced loans on the tribes of Britain. The Emperor Seneca called the loans due, and the Iceni believed they had repaid the loans through gift exchange. The Romans disagreed, taking the land as well as Prastatagus' property. Now, according to the Roman historian Tacitus, who got his information from his father-in-law, who had been stationed in Britain during the uprising. According to him, when the Romans showed up, they ignored the will, sexually assaulted Boudicca's daughters, and had her publicly flogged, probably to punish them for presuming to understand law better than Romans. Whatever the case, Rome attempted to take the land of Iceni, which did not sit well with Boudicca or her people.
Let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors. Well, I feel sponsored.
I also feel sponsored.
Yes, absolutely. Sponsored.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Tacitus wrote probably about 50 years or so after all this happened. Maybe not quite that, maybe 30. But his source was his father-in-law, and his father-in-law had been stationed in Britain at that time. But we don't know if he was stationed anywhere near the events that happened, and there were places he could have been that he would have heard about it, but wouldn't have seen anything.
Gotcha.
So we don't know how good his word is. But between the two, Cassius Dio is writing 100 years later based on the writings of Tacitus, and we don't know what else. So historians think Tacitus is probably a little more accurate than Dio.
Yes.
Now, once the Romans had gone, Boudicca gathered her people as well as people from other nearby tribes. History did not record the speech she made to these people, but Cassius Dio and Tacitus both give her a speech. This is Dio's version. Have we not been robbed entirely of most of our possessions, and those the greatest, while for those that remain we pay taxes? Besides pasturing and tilling for them, all our other possessions, do we not pay a yearly tribute for our very bodies? How much better... I should have had one of you do this. I'm not Boudicca material. I don't have that.
I feel like you are selling it. Go on, baby. You got this.
How much better would it be to have sold to masters once and for all than possessing empty titles of freedom to have to ransom ourselves every year? How much better to have been slain and have perished than go about with a tax on our heads? Among the rest of mankind, death frees even those who are in slavery to others. Only in the case of the Romans do the very dead remain alive for their profit. Why is it that, though none of us has any money, how indeed could we or where would we get it, we are stripped and despoiled like a murderer's victims, And why should the Romans be expected to display moderation as time goes on, when they have behaved toward us in this fashion at the very outset, when all men show consideration even for the beasts they have newly captured? But to speak the plain truth, it is we who have made ourselves responsible for all these evils, in that we allowed them to set foot on the island in the first place, instead of expelling them as we did their famous Julius Caesar. Yes, and in that we did not deal with them while they were still far away, as we dealt with Augustus and with Gaius Caligula, and make the attempt to sail hither a formidable thing. As a consequence, although we inhabit so large an island, or rather a continent, one might say that it is encircled by the sea. And although we possess a veritable world of our own, and are so separated by the ocean from all the rest of mankind that we have been believed to dwell on a different earth and under a different sky, and that some of the outside world, aye, even their wisest men, have not hitherto known for a certainty even by what name we are called. We have, notwithstanding all this, been despised and trampled underfoot by men who know nothing else than how to secure gain. However, even at this late day, though we have not done so before, let us, my countrymen, and friends and kinsmen, for I consider you all kinsmen, seeing that you inhabit a single island and are called by one common name, let us, I say, do our duty while we still remember what freedom is, that we may leave to our children not only its appellation, but also its reality. For if we utterly forget the happy state in which we were born and bred, what, pray, will they do reared in bondage? This is not actually Dio's speech in its entirety, but close enough for government work. Tacitus, on the other hand, gave Boudicca a speech that focused not on the ravishing of her daughters nor her own cruel treatment at the leathery ends of a flog, but rather how their freedom had been stripped away and they had been reduced to slavery. Whatever the case, she chose to lead her people to the end of it. And now let's take a moment for another word from our sponsors, just in case.
I feel sponsored.
I also feel sponsored. So sponsored, I'm gonna take this next one.
Awesome.
Boudicca at war. First up was the city of Camulodunum. Yeah, that. A Roman colony for retired soldiers where the Romans had built a temple to Claudius. Called Claudius?
Yep.
Okay. At quite the expense to the Brighton?
I always pronounce that Brighton. I could be wrong, but
Brighton population. It is reported that Boudicca had, what's that number?
120,000.
120,000 troops from the Iceni and soldiers, and other nearby tribes. They conquered.
If it's easier for you to say it, that Camulodunum is now a modern city called Colchester. So if you'd rather just call it Colchester,
I can say Colchester. They conquered Colchester in short order. Despite the retired soldiers and an influx of 200 other soldiers, a few retreated to the temple and survived. There for some days, before the temple was breached and soldiers killed, a small group of Romans tried to drive them off, but were quickly dispatched by the angry locals.
And that's where I had written Camulodunum is now Colchester, but I told you that because I get that Roman cities, very hard to pronounce.
Yeah, they're difficult to pronounce, yeah. The governor of the isle was Gaius Suetonius Paulius?
Yep.
Okay. who was leading troops against the island of Mona around that time, left a garrison to hold the island, while Suetonius arrived in Londonium, modern-day London, and realized he did not have the manpower to stop Boudicca's horde. He evacuated the city as best he could before the Iceni showed up, setting Londonium ablaze and killing and torturing almost anyone who had stayed behind. They even attacked the colony at Verulamium, modern-day St. Albans, killing Romans, taking plunder and sacking the city. Meanwhile, Suetonius gathered about 10,000 Roman soldiers and took up a position with the woods behind the narrow gorge. As the Britons approached, that would have worked either way, the Romans attacked with javelins, which I think are like the things you throw.
Yeah, the difference between a javelin and a spear is a javelin doesn't have a head. It's a wood shaft with a big point, whereas a spear has a head on it.
Right. And the throng was unable to press them in the narrow gorge. The Romans were able to wipe out their throngs, and according to the Cassius, they were spared neither man nor woman nor beast. And that was the end of Boudicca's war.
Some said that Boudicca became sick and died. Others claimed she was poisoned, and it was she who poisoned herself. Still others have pointed out that these things can both be true. Whatever the case, Boudicca did not survive her revolution. However, she has become a symbol of female power and strength at a time when such was far from common. No modern description of Boudicca exists, though Dio, writing 100 years after her death, claimed she wore a mantle of diverse colors, like a rainbow, fastened by a plain brooch. She had red hair down to her waist, a fierce gaze, and a harsh, commanding voice. In addition, she was said to be tall and terrifying.
My type of woman.
Boudicca was either used as a villain, or simply removed from historical accounts of the uprising. But in the 17th century, she began to appear in literary tales as a heroine, a British-born lady who was strong and not afraid to fight, even if the force was larger than her own. Famous poets and authors began to write stories and poems of the Queen of the Iceni, and she became a cultural icon and a bit of a hero to the people of Britain. Many statues of her or her daughters, or her and her daughters, decorate various places on the English map. And if you play the DC Universe Online game, there is an all-female toon league called Boudicca's Legion.
Happen to know the person who made that, and yeah, it's very inspired by Boudicca. The thought was Boudicca was maybe the first Wonder Woman. And since we're heading towards summary and final thoughts, okay. She wasn't winning that war. There was no way. She couldn't. Even if they had got past the governor of the island, right?
Right.
What would have happened? Well, the Romans would have regrouped, sent an even larger force, and crushed them. I mean, the Romans were the world at that time.
Pretty much.
So they had a lot more to draw from than the Iceni did. So there wasn't any way that Boudicca could win. So even though in her battles she largely outnumbered her foe, the thing I want to try to that really only mattered for the battles because the war, her foe was so much bigger.
Yeah.
And that did not stop her from spitting in their eye. And I find that kind of noble.
It's very much like the Braveheart tales and those kinds of things that, you can definitely tell that they were the David to the Goliath on the other end of that. And they knew it going in and they did it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think of Boudicca now that you've met her?
I think she was a very strong and independent woman who did what she could to make her place better. Try to show people that women aren't actually like these low-powered beings. She was actually a leader. She stood for who she was, and for that I commend her.
Yeah. I do like the idea of her in a many-colored robe, something that would fit very in with pride, because there's a bit of that nobility to pride, or at least there should be.
Yeah, usually there is.
That we're taking ourselves back. We're going to be who we are, and we don't care what you think. I like that, and I almost think that could be an American thing, but this predates America by 1,500 years or more.
Like a lot.
So
but the reason that you feel that, I think, is because that was the generalized idea. The initial American dream was to be freed of the persecution of having those expectations on you. So you can kind of see where that would come from in that frame of reference.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think one of the reasons I wanted to cover this was because I love showcasing what women can do. I love showcasing what we as humans are capable of, whether we're male, female, non-binary, trans, whatever. I love these stories that let us see someone exceed themselves. We don't even know this woman's actual name, but her story has resonated for almost as long as Jesus's has.
Yeah.
And that says something,
Absolutely.
And she didn't even have a poem about the 300 to carry her on.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. One of the things about doing this show with you two is that it reminds me each and every week that even sometimes as alone as I like to feel, I have near me islands of strength and knowledge that I can call on whenever I need them.
We're strong and independent, guys.
So,
well, before you get any weepier, we appreciate you and you standing up for your. I appreciate that you stand up for your daughters and your sons to be who they are, each and every single one of them. You've never set any kinds of expectations on them other than to just try to be who they are. And so you see that. I just want you to know that.
Well, my ultimate goal is that all of my children do not or stay in the cult of not being a Richard.
Yes.
To keep our PG-13.
Yeah, good.
Let's
that was a
not
good one.
Be crazy about that.
And
that's our show.
That's our show.
That's our show, guys.
Thanks as always for listening. Thanks for keeping us in the Good Pod's Top 100. Thanks to Blue Bose, our sound engineer.
I don't know.
He's busy.
Oh.
Okay. Anyway, please join our Facebook group.
Moderated by me. It's moderated by me, Laura Williams.
Yay! Find us on Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. Oh. Say hi, Blue.
Hi.
That's our sound engineer, Blue Bose. In case you were wondering what he sounded like. I did. We did.
Say hi.
That's all you needed?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just wanted you to say
we just
hi.
wanted you to say hi. You've never appeared on the pod. Well, you were on one episode, but, you know, I just wanted to remind people who you were. Thanks to Bill Barrett. Let me spell that last name. Behrendt. Bill is the man who did our theme music, which, speaking of which, we're going to have to get a different kind of theme music. Yes. But I might be able to put Blue on that. Anyway, thanks to Bill for our theme music. Bill is a musician, so if you need him to design music for you for a project or perform at some sort of function, like a party, event, wedding, you name it, then Bill's your guy. You can reach him at billbarrett@spcglobal.net. Thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie Crime Podcast, formerly of. She no longer does the RCP, but she left us about 100 episodes of Kick Butt Crime Pod, and she's a Canva addict, which she has combined with her own Arthur's artwork to make some amazing logo art for us. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thanks to Aaron Gnurk of the Big Dumb Fun Show for continuing to promote us locally each week. Join us next week as we depart from what we were going to do to take an early jump into spooky season with our episode on Phantom Trains. In a kind of history, kind of paranormal episode of the Family Plot Podcast.
Bye.